Without knowing it, you're sleeping on one of the biggest juggernauts for this upcoming 2024 college football season. Let me explain. Since taking over the head man position in Ole Miss before the 2020 season, Lane Kiffin has quietly built up this program, not just to be a solid, respectable program, but he's really built it up to be one of the powerhouses in the SEC. I know that might sound crazy, but Lane Kiffin has done it through building up the high school recruiting, but he's really the portal king, and there's a big reason for this. In Lane Kiffin's first year taking over the Ole Miss job, they were 35th in the transfer portal ranking classes. In this past portal cycle, Ole Miss was ranked number 1. Lane Kiffin has figured out the best out of anyone in college football to use the portal to, yes, get key guys that are transferring away, but wait to plug holes on his roster. And his very biggest hit in the portal has to be Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart transferring from USC, and there was a lot of talk that he could end up at somewhere like a BYU, somewhere to stay out West Coast, but Lane got him to see his vision and go down to Ole Miss in Mississippi. And it has been a home run hit. Well, yes, Jackson Dart can be and has had some inconsistencies. He's a big reason why this Ole Miss team this year, in my opinion, is not just a overlooked SEC team, but a team that has a real shot at not just winning the SEC, but making some noise in the CFP. Jackson Dart really cut down on his interceptions last year, throwing only 5 all season. He's continued to show poise in the pocket, and obviously with his legs is a threat on the ground as well. He's one of the better dual threats in college football, and I just don't think he gets a lot of respect that he, quite frankly, deserves. While yes, they did lose leading back Quinshon Judkins to Ohio State in the transfer portal, get very familiar with the name Ulysses Bentley. He's not a big household name, but man, is he a player. And they also got Rashad Amos in the portal from Miami, Ohio, who is also a nice complimentary back in the backfield to Bentley. Another reason why I'm so high on this Ole Miss team is the receiving room, highlighted by Trey Harris, who comes back for his senior year, and they got Juice Wells out of the portal from South Carolina. Juice Wells has battled some injuries, but man, when he is healthy, there are very few players that are better than him. And Trey Harris is just your throwback big body receiver that's just going to dunk on people over the top. Not many DBs are going to be able to out-physical him. And Juice Wells, when he gets the ball in his hands, a big play can happen at any time. They were also able to get Devin Price out of the portal from FAU. Nice size receiver at 6'3", who can be a nice complementary piece to them two guys. But this receiving room is going to go as Trey Harris and Juice Wells go. And it's not just the offensive side of the ball. This Ole Miss team and Lane Kiffin was able to get Walter Nolan out of the portal, who was part of that legendary Texas A&M class in terms of just something we have not seen with that many 5-star signing with one school. He's in the portal and lands at Ole Miss, and that was a huge get for Lane Kiffin. They also got Princely Umanaminan from Florida, who made headways earlier in the year when he transferred to Ole Miss, talking about he feels like he's getting better coaching at Ole Miss than he was at Florida, and that the attention to detail in Ole Miss's coaching staff just so much more than what Florida was, which just makes that game against Florida and Ole Miss in the swamp this year just a little bit extra edge to it. And they were also able to get linebacker from Arkansas, Chris Paul Jr., who is a tackles for loss machine and just someone that is just a key consistent component in that linebacker room going forward. I say all this to say, Lane Kiffin has even said and acknowledged it recently at SEC Media Day that he knew that they had to get bigger and stronger up front, and he knew it when they went up against Georgia last year. While yes, Ole Miss had the offense going into that game, Georgia was able to shut them down just because Georgia had the dogs, and Ole Miss just quite simply didn't. And they fixed that this offseason, whether that be in the high school ranks or in the portal. Lane Kiffin knows what it looks like. He's been around football enough, and he's been around the SEC long enough now that he knows what winning football in that conference looks like. The SEC gets paired to the NFL, and they always put the most players into the NFL draft for a reason. This conference, you have to dominate up front, and Ole Miss, while they may still be a year or two away from competing like we've seen up front from the Georgias and the Alabamas, they're ready to compete now with their overall talent this year, and a lot of that has to do with their schedule. Their non-conference schedule is kind of a joke, as you expect from SEC teams, starting off with Foreman and then Middle Tennessee, and then they're at Wake Forest, then they return home to play Georgia Southern. But then their first SEC game, you got Kentucky, you're at South Carolina, but the big game, they should be 6-0 after those. The big game is going to Death Valley and playing LSU. Now, I think Ole Miss should win that game, but LSU will give them a fight. They didn't have a bye. Take on Oklahoma, at Arkansas, and then you get that rematch of Georgia. I think Ole Miss loses, and I think that could be their first loss. They get a bye, and then they travel to the Swamp, as previously mentioned, to take on Florida. And then, obviously, you have the Egg Bowl after that against Mississippi State. In my opinion, Ole Miss can only lose one game all year, and I think it's against Georgia. Now, they could stumble at an LSU. Obviously, Mississippi State is not expected to be very good this year, but in a rivalry game, anything can happen. And I think Oklahoma, as previously stated on this channel, is going to be better than what people think. Outside of Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma, though, I really don't see teams that can challenge this Ole Miss team. And even then, I think they're at worst a 10-win regular season team, maybe pushing for more likely an 11-win team. I think Lane Kiffin has built up this program perfectly. It is all accumulated to be this season, and with the expanded playoff now, Ole Miss should not just be fighting for a spot. They should be in. I say all this to say, it's funny looking back just a year ago that before Auburn hired Hugh Freeze, it all looked like they were zeroing on to hire Lane Kiffin away. History goes on. Hugh Freeze leaves Liberty to go to Auburn. Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss. And what he's building is all accumulated for this upcoming season. I think Lane Kiffin's in a perfect spot finally for him after a long career. And I could see Lane Kiffin, a guy that has notoriously moved around from job to job, staying at Ole Miss till he's done. He's growing his roots here. He's grown his roots here. He's building up the program that he wants, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball as well. And if you can't tell, I'm really high on this team, and I am a big fan of Lane Kiffin and have been throughout his whole career. And I think Ole Miss makes the playoff, and I think Ole Miss has the best season in program history. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and turn post notifications on, and let me know down in the comments, what are your expectations for Ole Miss going into the season, and what do you think a realistic regular season record is for them?